What are you reaching for? If you're a smoker or vapor, you could be reaching for so much more with Zyn nicotine pouches. When you reach for Zyn, you're reaching for 10 satisfying varieties and 2 strengths for a smoke-free experience that lets you lean in, for chances to break free from your routine, and a unique nationwide community. Whatever you're reaching for, reach for it with America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Find yours in wherever nicotine products are sold near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Grief doesn't keep a calendar. Anxiety doesn't clock out after 5. Depression doesn't care if it's your busy season. But support can still fit into your life. With Grow, you can find a therapist who meets you where you are. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions. You can search by insurance, provider specialty, treatment methods, and more to find a therapist who works for you. And if it's not the right fit, switching is easy. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Find therapy on your time. Evenings, weekends, and cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/ACAST today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/ACAST. growtherapy.com/ACAST. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Hello and welcome to 15 Days of Festive Fear 2025, and we are on day number 4. And our story today comes from Frank. I have quite a few stories to tell, some being my own personal experiences and others being experiences from close family members and friends. The story I'm going to tell today is something that happened to me and my mother while we were babysitting my niece and nephew at their house some 20 odd years ago. I would like to give some backstory to help explain these events a little easier. I was born a lot later than my brother, so there is a 13-year age gap between us, and by him having children a little younger made me an uncle very early in life, which I loved. I was around 10 years old when these events took place, so when my brother and his then wife asked if my mother could babysit for them while they had a night out to themselves, I was brought along as to not be left at home alone at a very young age. I would like to add that I hated my brother's house. It had a very oppressive and heavy feeling to it, especially at night. On previous occasions when I would spend the night, I would always have a feeling that we weren't alone in the house and that someone or something was present, whether that was shadows in the corner of my vision or the light that seeped under the door of the room I was staying in, being blocked out briefly, as if someone was pacing back and forth outside on the landing and causing it to flicker under the door frame. Of course, if I ever got the courage to check, which wasn't often, there would be no sign of anyone awake, and maybe just the faint noise of snoring coming from their room. My brother would put it down to my imagination or simply just being a wuss. My brother was aware of the activity in the house though, and would come over to my mum's house for visits and recalled seeing a man's face in the TV static as the TV was just turning on and struggling to pick up a channel. But he put this down to a glitch in the signal. My brother married a woman, my then sister-in-law, who had 2 children from a previous marriage. An older girl who was a year or 2 my senior, and a younger girl who had significant needs. I am mentioning this as I believe this is how the activity in the house began and grew stronger over time. The younger girl, who I will call Lucy for the sake of this story, was a beautiful, sweet little girl who was born with a condition that only allowed half of her brain to function normally. So for most of her little life, and still now into adulthood, she has very limited vocabulary, and at the time hadn't started walking and so could only scoot or shuffle on her bum to get around. Lucy had started seeing and vocalising about an entity, or imaginary girl that she would call Sarah. There was no one in the family or friendship group that had that name. So when she started to say the name Sarah and point to the corner of rooms, it would make us all feel uneasy, as you could imagine. This was just put down to a number of things: an imaginary friend, a name she had overheard in conversation, or simply perhaps a character from one of the kids' shows she would watch. All pretty explainable, right? Until one day while visiting, I overheard her speaking with Sarah in her room and giggling to herself as if she'd been told something hilariously funny. My sister-in-law called for her to come to the top of the stairs so she could be helped down and have her lunch with us in the front room. What happened next still plays on my mind to this day. I could hear Lucy leave her room and shuffle to the top of the stairs, and then heard her mother ask in a very confused manner, "Lucy, what is that in your hand?" To which she kept replying over and over again, "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah." In her hands, gripped tightly, was a clump of thick, black hair. No one in the house had black hair. They didn't own a black-haired cat or a dog either, and all the dolls she had were baby dolls, bald and hairless. This shocked us all massively, but was played down to just a very strange coincidence. I guess to not freak everyone out completely, even though I was near having a heart attack and couldn't wait to get out of there. Fast forward to the night I began this story with. My brother and then wife were heading out and asked my mum to babysit for them. My nephew had been born earlier that year and was around 7 to 8 months old at the time. My mum agreed, so we set off to their house for the night. We arrived, said goodbye to my brother and sister-in-law, and settled down to watch TV while my nephew and Lucy were asleep in their beds upstairs. About 2 hours passed with nothing to note happening, until 3 loud bangs were heard coming from the upstairs landing, as if someone were stomping as hard as they could on the landing floor. Shocked, my mum raced upstairs with me right behind her, thinking that maybe Lucy had tried to get out of bed on her own and fallen onto the floor. We reached the top of the stairs and looked down the landing to find every door wide open, including the airing cupboard, but both children were fast asleep. This put the fear in me instantly, and I could tell that my mum was doing her best to hide her concern. The atmosphere had shifted, and it began to feel very heavy, oppressive and intense, as if something was watching and desperate for a reaction. My mum checked on Lucy and closed her door and began shutting the others. I checked my nephew and closed his. We went back downstairs only to be disturbed moments later by another 3 loud bangs from the landing. This time though, Lucy was awake and screaming. Again we raced upstairs to find the same scene, every door open and Lucy crying in her bed. My mum took her downstairs while I closed the remaining doors and checked on my nephew for a second time. But as I turned to close his door behind me, I found it shut in my face. I calmly, as I could, walked away and back down the stairs to my mum and Lucy, who were now on the sofa. The atmosphere was at a tipping point. The air felt thick and static. My mum soothed Lucy with a cuddle, and she eventually fell back asleep on my mum's lap. Half an hour passed again, and my mum decided to try and get Lucy back to her bed. She stated out loud, "Right, darling, let's get you back to your room." No sooner had those words left her mouth when a dark, guttural, animalistic growl came from the kitchen, as if a wolf or a very large dog was in the house with us. I could feel the colour drain from my face as the fear had now completely taken over me. I looked towards the kitchen and was met with a darkness so intense it looked to be a different shade of black to the rest of the darkened space. My mum leapt to her feet and began to tell me calmly but very seriously, "Go and get your nephew from upstairs. We are leaving." As I began to muster the courage, my brother and sister-in-law burst through the door, slightly tipsy and full of joy from the night they had had. And with their entrance, the atmosphere lifted and everything felt normal again. My mum decided not to say anything and we checked my nephew one last time and left. My mum retold the night occurrences to my brother the next day, which was met by scoffs and unserious banter. But I know what I saw and heard, and so does my mum. It was later found out that the older daughter of my sister-in-law had been practicing amateur dark magic in her room at night. Was this the reason for this activity? Or was it the sweet innocence of Lucy that attracted something quite dark and intimidating? I doubt we'll ever know for sure, but believe me when I say there was something unnatural and aggressive in that house. What I find really particularly interesting about this story is the fact that all of the staticky, dark, deep energy in the house dissipated as soon as the brother and sister-in-law burst through the door. You know, they're giddy, they're tipsy, they're full of joy from the night that they've had. And then when they come in, the atmosphere immediately lifts. Like, is that to do with their joy, giddiness, silliness from their night out, like counteracting the dark energy? Or was it the fact there was extra people in the house meant that the dark energy couldn't permeate, you know, so it had to dissipate? Very interesting indeed. And I wonder, was it the fact that there was a conduit, as it were, in the house? And I think there are lots of reasons why people can potentially be more connected to the other side. Like, it might be because of, you know, age, as in children seem to be more connected to the other side, as do much older people who are coming closer to death. I also think it can be linked to people who just have a darkness in them, whether that's like a psychological darkness or they're just not very good people. I think they can invite things in. But of course, you know, there's a possibility that it is the house itself that is active. And that obviously, you know, Frank, you said you had oppressive feelings, that you hated the house and it would feel very heavy, especially at night time. So, you know, maybe the kind of mix of people in the house at certain times kind of encouraged weird things to come through. But it sounds really dark. I mean, Lucy having a fistful of hair is petrifying. Like, where did it come from? And she's insisting that it's from Sarah, and she has this thick black hair. Because obviously, you know, immediately, you know, nobody in the house has black hair. There's no animal in the house with black hair. Like, where the heck did it come from? And I always think that if something is like slamming doors aggressively, and obviously you heard that growl from the kitchen, which would make my hair stand on end, I think. If you experience that, I think it is something that is trying to intimidate you, that is trying actively to scare you, whatever that is. Like, I don't believe that demons are knocking around in people's houses. I just don't believe that. I don't really believe in demons anyway, and I think they would have better things to do, as I always say. And I know that a lot of people disagree with that, and that is fine. But I do think that obviously something was trying to scare and intimidate you and your mom specifically. Like, obviously, I know you started this by saying that you've got lots of stories, but I'm really curious to know if your brother and your sister-in-law at the time, if they experienced anything that felt dark and sinister in the house. And I mean, obviously, like you say, they all knew that Lucy was communicating with somebody called Sarah, but obviously you can say also it's just an imaginary friend, it's a name she's overheard, or, you know, somebody from a kid's show. There's lots of reasons as to why somebody would be chitter-chattering to somebody called Sarah. The clump of hair, different, and the static, seeing a man's face in the TV static is also really interesting. But yeah, I would be curious to know whether or not they experienced anything that felt really sinister. And listen, props to your mom for being like, get the kids, we're getting out of here immediately. Because often we don't see that, you know. Often we see people going, no, we're just going to stay and just deal with the fact that there's growling from the kitchen and doors slamming upstairs. No, just take the kids, we're getting out of here. That's the kind of energy that we want. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Frank for sending in your story. Remember, if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
What are you reaching for? If you're a smoker or vapor, you could be reaching for so much more with Zyn nicotine pouches. When you reach for Zyn, you're reaching for 10 satisfying varieties and 2 strengths for a smoke-free experience that lets you lean in. for chances to break free from your routine and a unique nationwide community. Whatever you're reaching for, reach for it with America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Find yours in wherever nicotine products are sold near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.